is essentially how you would create an event through the event wizard, which we call it, which is like the event builder. This is accessible to anyone, so end users as well as organizers. The process is relatively the same. So if an end user wanted to go through and build a club, for example, we basically mimic the event process to the club process. So if they were to build a club or an event, it would be very similar in the way that you would sort of go about that. Um, we're going to go through some of the like end user basics first, and then I'll get into sort of the more organizer, PTSA stuff. And then from there, we'll also go through a few instances of maybe creating a coupon for a specific event. We already have a few actual events built for snowboard already. They're more like training camps. So I'll kind of go through the dashboard portion of that as well, just to give you an idea. And then from there, you could feel free to ask me any questions related to sort of the event creation and anything related to maybe the financials with the events and so on and so forth. So just to get us started, we're just going to end up on our dashboard when we log in. So everyone should be familiar with this. If you're not, when you first log in, there's a tools area in the top. I'm going to have a few more options than you will, but you'll see a dashboard function. And then when you hit dashboard, it'll land you in the events area. That's sort of the first default area that you see. You might see a bit more or maybe less than I am. I can see everything on SnowReg right now, so you're probably going to see a bit of ski and freestyle. So when we go and actually create our event, we're going to go ahead and hit create event. What this does here is bring us into the event setup. So when we go through the event setup, there's sort of two areas that pop up depending on whether you actually have created something versus actually like brand new, never created an event on the system before. You're more than welcome to create test ones if you're kind of playing around with it. I encourage you to sort of play around and sort of find things that maybe you don't understand or are confused about, and then we can clarify that for you. So the first thing that you're presented with is listing details. The listing details is the first portion that you'd see in, when you're looking for an event on the system. So if you're looking for, Canada Snowboard Training Camps #1, for example, this is the first portion that would show up. So you'd see a logo and then the name, the dates that it runs for, location, and address. So the website address, if that's applicable, and then maybe a contact information as well. So this is sort of the basic information that you would fill out here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in some test information. So I'm just going to put test event. And then what happens here is we have an event start and end date. Now, this can be sometimes a little tricky because events generally, they may run over a whole weekend or they may have, split weekends. So the event may be like, a 2-week sort of deal. We have this thing in Whistler called Crankworks for cycling, and it's an event, but it runs over 2 weekends. So the event start and end date would be from, say, September 1st to September 13th or 14th. So in this case here, we're going to put in the start date. We're going to assume that our event starts on September 1st, and we're going to assume it ends on, let's say, September 3rd. So it's about a 3-day event, sort of midweek. This would be the same for any training camps that you would build. So in the instance of a training camp, it's a camp. So sometimes they run for like 3 months at a time on specific dates. I'll sort of go into a little more detail with that and sort of the standard procedure we go about doing that. Generally, for things like that, we ask that you send us some information. That way we can sort of help analyze and build the page out to the specifications that you're looking for. So from here, we're going to actually go, so apartment and suite number, you can kind of ignore this one. This is some extra information. For snowboard, I assume nobody's going to be going into someone's apartment. Um, for event start location address, we do use Google Maps to sort of pinpoint a correct address. So if you're on like a ski hill or a mountain, um, generally you can input the mountain name and Google will sort of find that for you. You wouldn't be able to sort of put in Sun Peaks Resort hill number 5, for example. That sort of extra tidbit of information, hill number 5, we generally say to put on the landing page of the event, which we'll get into in just a moment here. But when you actually view the landing page itself, we generally say to put more of the complex information there and sort of leave the listing to be sort of some general stuff that people can look at during the actual process. So when we want to put our event location address, I'm just going to use Sun Peaks Resort as an address here. As I know some of you also have um, mountains in the area or maybe like specific ski hills that you may use. So in this case here, we're just going to go ahead and put in Sun Peaks, and then we can also put in a website address. I'm just going to put in interpodia.com. I know that for a few of the training camps that we have already done, that they utilize their provincial website to sort of post information on there. So the event website address may be, QuebecSnowboard.com or, BCSnowboard.com. That's totally fine. If there is no address, then you're sort of using the landing page as a website in itself. You're more than welcome to do that as well. Lots of, smaller training camps, especially if they're run, by someone who generally doesn't run events that much. Sometimes they just like to have the one, event landing page as a place to put information. So for contact email, this is what's usable for us at SnowReg. So in this case, if we wanted, SnowReg for us to actually help people register if they're having issues, this is the email that we would give an end user in order to contact the organizer. So in this case, sometimes it's like an info@ email, or maybe it just might be the PTSA email, or an organizer's Hotmail account or Gmail account. These types of information right here is specifically for us to give end users. And then below we have a contact phone number. So this is for us at SnowReg in order for us to have a bit more contact information with the people organizing the event. Generally, we have, there we go. Generally, we have, ways to create, be able to like contact people. So when we contact someone, we generally like to have as much information as possible, as sometimes, we want to help the people who are having trouble, who are email us to our inbox as much as possible. So it's not totally necessary that we have a number here, but it definitely helps us being able to answer questions a bit faster. And then we have event logo. So the event logo here is actually, you can put anything you want in here. I know a few of the training camps are just simply using the PTSA logo. They can also use, a custom designed one if they have it. You're more than welcome to put, anything you want in here that sort of specifies sort of what they're doing or what they're registering for. So in this case, I'm just going to put in my email here. And for the contact phone number, I don't really want to put my personal number in there, so we're just going to put a bunch of zeros. And then for the event logo, I don't really have any sort of actual event logos to put on there right now, so I'm going to leave that and come back later and put that in. So we're going to go ahead and hit done. So when we hit done, it's going to collapse all of the listing details for us, so we don't get sort of overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff showing up. And then it brings us to the classification. So what the classification does is bring up the, so when you're looking for an event on SnowReg, so it'd be snowboarding, snowshoe, or skiing, when we want to classify an event, We have a few, options here. These are not flushed out yet. We will be adding more specific ones for snowboard in here. Um, I'm sure the list will get quite long. But this is what people would do to filter out certain training camps or events. Um, I'm sort of familiar with snowboard, so I know there's, some like airbag training and, there's different types of styles of snowboarding. So there might be training camps specific to certain areas. So you're able to select multiple ones. So if your training camp is sort of covering a few different things and people are trying to find a training camp on SnowReg, they're able to filter in our listing area what they're looking for, and it'll only show the events or training camps within the parameters of these classifications. So we're gonna go ahead and put freestyle in here. Go ahead and hit done. And then it brings us down to social media links. So what social media links does is auto-populate icons on the events landing page on SnowReg. So if you have any specific, social media, so if you're utilizing, say, Yukon Snowboards Facebook page or maybe Alberta Snowboards Facebook page, you can put in the link for the Facebook here. And what it'll do is auto-populate the icons on the landing page. So all they have to do is click Facebook, and it'll automatically direct them over to the Facebook page. We had a lot of requests, and we did it a different way before, and it wasn't very intuitive. So now we've just kind of put them in there. So you're more than welcome to add those in now, or you can actually put them in later from your dashboard. So in this case, I don't have any social media links right now. We're a pretty small event, so we're just going to go ahead and hit done. And then what happens is it gives you a few options down here. So depending on the situation you're in, you'll maybe want to select apply for a permit. We're going to change this wording over to sanctioning. So this is where you would go if you wanted to sanction your event. We also have save and come back later. So if you're not sure what to do next, you're more than welcome to go ahead and hit save and come back later. And what this will do is give you access to the dashboard if you didn't have it already. So if you're an end user, maybe running a club and you have a few club training sessions that you're building, or maybe you're brand new to SnowReg and you're brand new organizer and you'd like to build out your application, you can come back in here, and if you're not sure what else to put in there, you can save it, come back later, and the system will automatically grant them permission to view the dashboard. Obviously, their dashboard will be specific to them. And then we also have submit for review. So this comes up at the end as well when we go through our registration. So what this does is sends it to us at SnowReg so that we can review the registration. It lets us know that someone is ready for us to review. We always review the events or training sessions or clubs that get submitted. There's always little things that the Event Wizard or Club Wizard doesn't capture. So we always, review them, make sure the taxes are correct. Maybe there's a different way that we can do things that maybe isn't available to you through this. So every time that you want to build something through the Event Wizard, you'll have to submit it to us at SnowReg. So we're going to go ahead and hit Set Up Registration. And what this is going to do is bring us into the registration portion of the Event Wizard. So this is going to be like all the meat and potatoes of the actual event itself. So we have the new registration set up, and then we also have a clone existing application. So cloning an existing application, we're able to look at, maybe a previous event that we ran. Maybe it's a training session that's like eerily similar to the one that you're currently wanting to build. In this case, we could clone it, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to go through it as if we have nothing. So in this case, we have the time zone. So this will automatically pick out the time zone for you. So in this case, we are on PDT or Pacific Daylight Time. If you're on the East Coast or maybe in Alberta, you'd have Mountain Time, or East Coast, you'd have Eastern Time. The system will automatically pick the time zone for you. So if we put in the registration opens on, so calendar widget opens on September 2nd and then closes on September 30th. We put it on the 3rd, so perfect. If we do like this, and I say I want the registration to open at 8 a.m. Pacific time. This is going to go off the fact that we are in a Pacific time zone, or I am in a Pacific time zone. So if I put in 8 o'clock here, Eastern time, it's going to be 3 hours ahead, or in Alberta, it's going to be an hour ahead. So it'll be 9 a.m. For Alberta, or in the eastern portion, it'll be 11 a.m. And then in this case, when you're building them in your different time zones, you'll be able to say, I want it to open up at 8 a.m. and it's going to be in Eastern time if you're in Ontario or Quebec or Nova Scotia. And then in Alberta, it'll obviously be Mountain time. Or if you're in the States, it'll be in those various different time zones as well. So we want our registration to open at 8 a.m. on the 2nd and then close a day later at 12 noon. Oops. I think I messed up that one there. There we go. So we want it to close at 1 a.m. on the 3rd. So you have a 13-hour window here. So in this case here, we have who is paying the processing fees. So we do have widgets here that kind of remind you as to what they are. So for the processing fees, this is sort of how we pass off. Do you want the end user to pay the SnowReg processing fee, or did you want to absorb the processing fee as the organizer? In this case, we're going to go ahead and do the user. So we want to take our net as what our registration fee is. So if a registration fee is $60, we're going to net $60 off the registration fee. If we had a $60 registration fee and we wanted to absorb that, it would be the $60 minus the processing fees, and then your net would be that total. So for the purposes of this, we're just going to do user. The currency, you can choose between Canadian and USD. We can add new currencies depending on the circumstance. We generally don't have to. Usually it's either in Canadian or US dollars, but if there is some weird currency that you need to process, you guys would have to contact Rupert and then they can sort that out. So in this case, we're going to do Canadian dollars, and then the tax country, we're in Canada, but we can also select from an infinite list of countries here. And then we also have the sales tax portion. So if this training camp or event or even a club needs to collect sales taxes on the registration prices, this is where you would specify this. In here, you can also specify if the user is paying a tax or the organizer is paying tax. So in the instance of, say, you're making the user pay the processing fee, but you don't really want them to pay the 5% or 13% or 15% tax, you can absorb the tax and then the user can pay the processing fee, so it kind of evens out a little bit. Normally what we see is that it's sort of even. So if the user is paying the processing fee, they also pay the tax, and then vice versa. And then you can also select the tax rate. So we have a lot of tax rates available here. These are sort of predetermined tax rates. So you're able to choose, which one is applicable to you. In this case, if we were in BC like I am, it would be a 5% tax. If you're in, Ontario, I'd be at 13%, and then, New Brunswick 13%, and then so on, and then Quebec 14.975. In this case, our event doesn't charge tax, so we're going to go ahead and hit no, and we're going to skip that portion. We're going to hit click done, and what this is going to do is bring us down to our races and categories portion. So what this does is these are the registration options. So if you have maybe different times for training camps, so if you wanted to sign up for the 8 a.m. class versus the 10 a.m. class, or maybe a 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. class, those would be your registration options. So these are what you would put here in the categories portion. If you had an event, I'm not sure, I'm not very familiar with the snowboard event structures, so I'm not totally sure how the categories work for that. But if there was, say, an age grouping, you would be able to create a new category from here. You can name the category. So we're going to go ahead and call this one, U6 visual capacity as well. So I can set it as a 10,000, or I can set it as 3. If I set it to an obscene number, it usually just lets anyone in unless you expect 10,000 people in the U16 category. In the case of the sort order, this is the order in which you would have people show up, the categories show up in the list. So if someone is applicable for, say, U16 or a general registration category, and they both showed up, this would show the order in which they show up in the registration process. Um, you can sort them, or you can't. It's totally up to you. If there's specific age groupings, they'd only see one category, so it wouldn't really matter too much here. And then we have restricted by age. So if we go and put a restriction on here, we can say that it's only for 14 to 15-year-olds. And what this will do is restrict the age for registration. So if the person does not meet this age range, they will not be given this category. They'll be given anything else applicable. If there's nothing else applicable, then we can, the system will automatically tell them that nothing's applicable for them and they can't register for this. So if there is like a training camp only for U16 participants, you wouldn't have someone 18 plus registering unless we had special permission from either the organizer or yourself saying, yep, this person's totally okay. And then we make arrangements on SnowReg's side of things to sort of override that portion. And then we can also restrict by gender. So in this case, we have male and female. So if you wanted to make it so it's a U16 male category, we can also choose a gender and then restrict that to males as well. Good. So we have the prices and then the category price names. So when we create a price like $40, the system will automatically name the price. This price doesn't show up anywhere. So this price name doesn't show up anywhere except for the organizer's dashboard or us at SnowReg. It's more for system administration because sometimes there might be some special configuration on the back end that we've set up for you. So in the instance that you, can we adjust the restrict age to have date of birth or year of birth? Janet has a question here. Can we adjust the restrict age to have date of birth or year of birth? Racing ages for our events are December 31st of the season. For this season, it will be December 31st for the 20th. Yep. So we'll get into that in just a second here. We can set the how the system calculates the date of birth. So in your instance here, we have December 31st. So if I was a U16 male, I would have to be 16 years old by the end of this year, or under 16 years old by the end of this year. So it would work the exact same way that the membership process works. It uses the same logic. So if the person is turning 16 this year, they would not be eligible for this category. So if we go ahead and click save for our U16 male category at $40, you'll see that it lists them here. So we can add or we can keep adding new categories, as many as we need. And then in this case, we're just going to go with one category for now. But if you did have more, they would all be listed out in the order that you would put them in. Say I've created my category for $40, but oh shoot, I forgot to put the early bird price in there. You can go back in and make this edit as well. And in this case, in order to create the discount, we're going to go ahead and click add discount and then go by date. And then you can create your own early bird prices. So the discount name, as it says here, will show up on the transaction receipt. And then you can do the amount as well as a value or a percentage. And then the date from, as well as the time from, date to, and time to. In this case, we're going to skip over this one. I don't want to take too much time creating early birds, as sometimes there can be 3 or 4 of them. But in this case, you can create as many as you want for the values that you need. So I'm going to go ahead and exit that and then click save. So moving on down here, we have the Omnium registration option. I won't go into too much detail. This is fairly specific to certain events. So we can kind of go over that on like an event per event basis, sort of how you guys want to set that up. We also have the overall event capacity. So in this case, we have 1,000. So 1,000 people can register in this entire event or training camp. So in this case, we're going to keep it as 1,000 because we don't want really any restriction and we don't expect 1,000 people to register. So we can go ahead and click done. And we have registration fields. So these are where you can sort of the information that we're going to ask during registration. So you'll have gender, date of birth, nationality, and address. So in the case for this, we also have, we have a few other things that we can do in the back end, but these are generally what we like to capture. And then just below that, you're also going to have the registration forms. So these are exactly the same as what we have in the membership process when we ask questions. So we call them a form because sometimes they're not really a questionnaire and they're not really an information grabber. So we kind of blanketed the term. So in this case, we have a form title and heading. So we can put in, say, additional information. And then we can add as many questions as we want, as well as remove the questions that we no longer need. So what this does is it groups the questions underneath this heading. So if the additional information included when was the last time you did freestyle? And then we can do, say, date and year. And then we've created this question here. And then we want them to put a short answer in. So when they go to answer this question, they'll be given a text field, and then they can fill in this information that we've asked for. Currently, the question is not required. So when you go through the process, they could skip over this question. If you wanted the question to be required, so they must answer this question before they continue through the registration process, you can go ahead and click registered question, required question. And what we'll do is it'll require them to actually answer the question before even continuing. So if it's a really important question, they will have to actually select that. So we can go ahead and hit create form. And we've created our first registration form for this specific event registration. We can create as many of them as we need to. So if you need multiples, feel free to create them. You're also able to add them from the dashboard, which I'll show you in just a few minutes here. So you won't have to do it all right now. If you don't remember or don't have the information right now and you just want to get the preliminary setup done, you're more than welcome to sort of leave it as what you have here. Then go ahead and click done. And then agreements and waivers. So if there's any specific waivers that you want to have during the event registration, you can. What I'll be going over when we get to the dashboard portion is the registration rules. And this is where you would say that I need to have a specific license type to register. So for instance, a membership to Alberta Snowboard. If they are requiring a membership to Alberta Snowboard, they will have to have signed the Canada Snowboard waivers applicable for those. So when we say agreements and waivers, it really is really dependent on the event. Sometimes the event has a separate waiver other than, the provincial waiver. They also might have, ways to actually, like a code of conduct or like a refund policy, for example, might be included here. So depending on the situation, sometimes you won't need to put anything here because maybe it covers you based on the provincial waiver, or maybe you might have something specific to this event, like a refund policy that you might want to put in here. In the case that we do want to put something in here, we can go to click new agreement, and then we can actually select a few different areas here. So a refund policy or a waiver and agreement. And it'll also give you a few more options to go through here. What we generally like to do is that if there's a waiver and it's quite lengthy or quite complicated, is to send it to us and let us format it for you. Um, it tends to get a little confusing and a little hard to copy and paste from Word documents sometimes. Um, so if you are having trouble creating waivers, no sweat it. Um, feel free to send us an email um, to our info@snowredge email, and we can definitely help you out in terms of getting that in there for you. So I won't go through too much in the waiver portion, but in the refund policy, we do have the title and then of course the body, and then you can of course upload the PDF or docx file for the actual um, waiver file that you're copying from. So in this case, we're going to go with the provincial waiver, and we're not going to put any specific refund policies in here. Once we hit done, it's going to bring us down to this what next portion again. So this is sort of what I was talking about through the process, and then it sort of reduces the amount of options depending on what you've already done. So in this case, we can continue to our dashboard, and we can edit from the dashboard, or we can submit for review, or we can apply for our sanctioning at this point as well. So in this case, if I were to hit submit for review, one of my colleagues would be pinged an email, and then it would go into one of our queues, and then we would review the registration and then let the organizer know with the information that they've given us in the contact information, anything else that we may need. In this case, we're going to continue to the dashboard. And what this is going to do is take all of that information that we just input into the event wizard and put it into the familiar dashboard interface. So in this case, we're going to have all of our information that we put in here. So the owner, of course, is going to be me. And then we also have the account. So this is sort of where the funds are going to go. And then, of course, the financial controllers, the administrators. And then we also have our sanction. So if you decide you need to apply for sanction, you can go directly into it from here. And it'll give you the option to pick which province that you need to sanction under, and then you can sort of go from there. The listing preview, we have no logo here, but if there was a logo, it would be right here. The event name, the date range in which the event is happening, location, social media links if we had them, and then the listing status. I'll go into this in a second here. And then we also have just an overview of our registration configuration that we just did. But if we wanted to go over to event listing, it's going to be the exact same sort of format that we just did in the event wizard. So it's taken all of our information and plopped it in here. Listing status. So this is a status that it goes into when it's either being approved or you've just recently submitted it. So in this case, it's in draft mode. So nobody can see this except for us at SnowRedge, and then of course the person that created or owns this listing or event. So in the case of, you're going to see a few other options here that are sort of super administrator, but all of the ones below here are applicable for you. So you'll have the URL, so you can customize the URL if you don't want to use the system generated one. There's also the start and end dates, location, website address, contact email, and contact phone number. All of this is editable by you. So if you wanted to come in and you maybe made a mistake on the phone number or put the wrong email in here, or maybe you have a website now, you can come in here and at any point you can update this. So in this case, we're pretty happy with all of our information here, and we're just going to continue along. So if I go ahead and hit configuration, it's going to open up a lot more information here. I'll go over a few of the main ones, and then the other ones I'll sort of go through on a one-on-one basis. I don't want this call to go on too long. So in the case here, we have overview. So this is going to bring us all the information that we input at the beginning of our event wizard there. So we have our registration open, close date, how we're charging tax, how we're charging the fees, is there any taxes, and then the age calculation date. So this is where we would specify whether we want to or want the system to calculate their age. So in the case of Janet's question, this is where you would specify how you want the system to review any age restrictions that you've input. So if we go back to where we were creating our event, we have the U16 category. So in this case, it's going to calculate that U16 age based on September 1st. But if we wanted to change that to be the end of the year, we can go ahead and click the little calendar here, and we can select any month in this year, or we can go way ahead to 2021. But in this case, it seems like all the events are maybe on December 31st of 2019. So we go ahead and hit December and then click December 31st, and then we hit save. And now our age calculation has been saved. So when someone goes to register, they must be U16 within this year. If they are turning, say, 16, the system won't let them register because they won't be applicable anymore. So this is how you would, do the age calculation dates here. You can also set passphrases. So if there is a specific passphrase, or you want to lock people out of being able to register without, having this passphrase, you can create a passphrase here. So if it's a special event only for certain athletes, you can set a passphrase and then email those athletes and say, hey, here's your passphrase to register for test event number 1, or snowboard championship qualifier, or something around that area. We can go into our content. So this is where you will do the registration front page. You're able to view the registration front page at any point. So if you wanted to view it, you would go ahead and click this little white button here, and it would bring you onto the registration front page. So right now, we have the new interface on SnowReg, so it's a bit different than what I'm used to. But in this case, we have the name of the event, location, the time the event is happening, our registration options. So these are all pre-populated by the system. You're more than welcome to remove these at any point and put your own information in there, as well as any of the contact info. So in this case, we've kind of moved around the buttons. So if you wanted to review anything, you can. I'm going to exit out of our front page here and just move on over to here. So this information here, we are able to edit ourselves. So if we didn't want the system to pre-populate a pricing table, we can remove that, and we can put our own pricing table in here. It's just like a text editor. So if you're proficient in HTML, you're more than welcome to go in and do your own sort of special stuff. But if you wanted to create a table, you hit the create table button and you can create a table from there. I encourage you to sort of create a test event like I did here and just play around in these options. Just get familiar with it, as you'll be using it quite a lot. When we get to, we can do more custom stuff as well, but that's on a per event basis. For the most part, usually it's pretty simple. This is the bottom of the registration page. So this would show up first, and then this would show up towards the bottom of our landing page. We have our email header. So if you wanted to put an email header other than the standard SnowReg one, you can. And we have the confirmation email. So the email that gets sent to registrants when they register. You can also send yourself a test. So if you wanted to, make sure that, hey, I made some modifications to my registration confirmation email, you're more than welcome to send yourself a test email to make sure it works. But it doesn't populate any of the special system populated tags because the information doesn't exist because you're not registered. And then we have the transaction successful message. So this shows up just after you pay. So you can put anything you want here. We just have standard stuff that we put there. So you're more than welcome to edit any of this stuff if you need to. I'll move over to styling. So this is just some quick styling stuff that you can do for any of the registration pages. So you can change the theme colors. So if you want the buttons to be purple or yellow or green or orange or red, more than welcome to do that. You can change whether you want the logo to show up or not. We have the logo, the background, and then we also have templates here. So if you wanted the layout to be the new page, you can do that. If you wanted it to be the old one, you can do that as well. So you can switch between two templates. I encourage you to check out which one sort of works for you. This is a sort of a new thing that we have. It actually got released, I think, on Monday. So I haven't really had a chance to play around with it myself. But from what I understand is that each template has their own set of like sort of parameters that sort of restrict and unrestrict things. So you'll see that we now have like headers and backgrounds and mobile backgrounds. The new event landing page sort of does away with some of that extra stuff and does it automatically for you. So in this case, you're more than welcome to switch between templates if you need to. I personally would say play around with both, figure out which one is good for you, and then sort of stick with that one. We have registration categories. So again, we're back to where we created our first category. If we forgot to create them, we can create new ones. So you can go ahead and hit add a new category and then just keep adding as many as you need. And then we get to registration rules. So this is where you would put whether the registration requires a membership from a specific PTSA. I'm going to pick on Alberta for now. If you wanted to, make it restricted to only Alberta snowboard memberships, you can go ahead and add a rule. You're going to see a little bit more than you normally would, but Alberta snowboard is at the very top. And then what you can do is actually select the license types that can register for this. So if we wanted people to have any license type in Alberta snowboard, they're more than welcome to keep all of them here. If we only wanted recreational and compete members too, we just go ahead and uncheck these boxes. And the system will automatically configure everything for you. And all you have to do is hit save. So now what's going to happen is when we go through the registration process, it's going to ask us, or it's going to check our profile and see if we have either a compete membership or a recreational membership from Alberta Snowboard. If we don't, then it'll ask us to purchase it within the registration process. So they won't have to leave. They can just simply go through the process and do everything all at once. And then we're back at registration forms. So this is where we were before in our event wizard. We can create more forms if we need to. Team categories, if there is any sort of team category setup, this is where it would show up. We also have MailChimp. So depending on what you use to actually contact people, you're more than welcome to integrate MailChimp into your event. What this will do is actually send all of the information that we capture during registration into the specified MailChimp list. I won't go into too much detail with MailChimp as it is quite its own league in terms of demos. But if you are familiar with it, the system will automatically send all the information to where you need it to go. So you won't have to download a report and then try to extract information that way. We also have a bit more complicated stuff here. So in advanced config, you won't have access to this. I can because I'm the super user. But in this case, you'll be able to edit anything below here. So store messages, cart messages, header messages. This stuff you might not see depending on the actual event itself. You might actually want to do just ignore this stuff. That's totally fine. We generally use this stuff for actual register, for us to like configure stuff. But if you feel comfortable, by all means, feel free to go through and mess around with the advanced configs. And we have our waivers, which we just talked about earlier, and then we have stores. So if you wanted to offer merchandise stores for your event or club or training session, you can create your own stores for products, so like jerseys or headbands or sunglasses or goggles, just sort of that kind of stuff. You're more than welcome to create your own stores. If you don't feel comfortable with it, feel free to send us the information and we can do it for you. There's a few different types of stores. There's a standalone, which is like your normal, go to Nordstrom.com and buy a T-shirt. And then we have in process. So what in process is means that you cannot buy any items from this store. So we'll call it Alberta Snowboard Goggle Store. You can't buy any of these goggles or maybe it's free T-shirts without being in the registration process. So generally this means that it's only applicable when you're registering and not any other point. There's a few other iterations that we can do for stores. I won't go into them right now. They more or less come up on a person-to-person or event-to-event basis. So I encourage you also to play around in the stores functions. Just get like familiar with them. I'm sure down the road there might be some sort of merchandise sales that you need for events or training sessions, that kind of stuff. And then of course, we have our metrics tab, which should be familiar to you from your membership area during the membership organizations tab over here. So it's pretty much all the same, except now we have registration breakdowns, team breakdowns, and then also product lists. So if you wanted to quickly look at the quantity sold and what's left for stock in certain products, you can. And then of course the almighty reports area. Right now, we aren't going to have access to any of the actual reports because we have no registration, so there's no information for the system to populate the reports with. But if we did have at least one registration, we'd be able to see that. Now, that being said, I do have one of the training sessions that we do have available right now on SnowReg. It's actually live, and these are real registrations, and this is for Yukon. So this is sort of what your dashboard would look like with everything filled in. I'll just kind of quickly go through it at a glance here. So you'll see our listing preview is kind of all filled in here. We have all our information down here. We also have our listing, which should be a little bit more full-fledged. So we have our approved listing status, listing visibility, so people can see it on the front end. We have our logos, the contact information, social media links we have filled in as well. And then in the configuration tab, you're also going to see in the content that she put some custom stuff in here for herself for these specific events. So she has me, I think 6 or 7 different training sessions running right now. So each training session has its own customized front page depending on the situation. She has age restrictions, times, dates. She wants to utilize the category table, confirmation emails, and then we can go ahead and review her registration page. And this is sort of what a registration page would look like when it's all filled in and we have all the information. So you'll see the registration fees here. And then we also have, register now, contact information down here. If we go in and try to register, it's going to ask us for the Yukon Snowboard memberships. I won't go through the registration right now, but if you did want to go through registration, these are available on our front end. So feel free to go through them at any point if you want. And then obviously we'll go over to the reports, and the reports populate now because there's actual information for them to generate with. So it's going to be your standard reports, financials, registration. They're going to be almost similar to what we have for memberships. So you're going to have canceled registrations instead of canceled memberships, complete registrations, but in this case, it shows the membership info. So you can pull up their membership information in here. And then we also have financial reports and then permit reports. This will show up sort of everywhere for me personally. It shouldn't show up for any of you guys. And that kind of concludes sort of the event registration portion of everything. I'll sort of leave this open just in case there's anything that I need to touch on. But is there any questions so far before I go into coupon codes and then we sort of end our discussion here? All right, I'll keep continuing going along. Feel free to stop me at any point if there's anything that comes up. So now that we've created our event, we want to create coupon codes. So we have a few athletes that are our star athletes, and we don't want them to pay for anything because we want to give them as much free stuff as possible. So on our left side here, we're going to see the exact same setup here. But in this case, we're going to see coupon. So we're going to go ahead and click on coupon. And I'm going to see a bunch of coupons here. But in this case, we're going to just pull up our create a coupon area just over here. And we can select what it applies to. So if we wanted it to apply to our test event, we can. So I'm going to go ahead and click test event. So now this coupon is going to apply to everything within this test event here. So we can name the coupon code. Coupon codes are case sensitive. So if you do put, snowboard, this N will need to be lowercase when they type it in. We've had lots of people type in coupon codes and not realize that it's case sensitive, and the whole coupon code is in capital letters, and they put it in lowercase because sometimes different sites have different ways they do coupon codes. In this case, if they typed it in snow but it all in lowercase, the system wouldn't recognize it. We can select the currency that it applies to, so Canadian, pounds, USD, and euros. In this case, because our event is in a Canadian currency, we obviously want our coupon code to apply for a Canadian currency. And then we also have value and percentage. So depending on the situation, you may want it to be $10 or 10%. You're more than welcome to choose whichever one fits the preference. And then we have maximum uses. So the way that we count a use in a coupon code is when they check out. So they can apply the coupon code in the cart, but we don't consider that being a used code because there may be like 15 people that are registering. There's only 5 uses, but if 5 people out of those 15 apply the code but don't check out, then it's kind of a waste of a code. So we only count this once they hit the checkout button and their purchase is complete. So in this case, we want 10 uses out of our code. We can also set expiration dates. So if we want the code to have a dynamic expiration date, let's say they wanted it to be for only 1 week during the event, say like blowout sale for training sessions. We can have a specific date that we can set for these. And then of course, the description. The description will show up in your reports section. So when you're going through the reports, you'll be able to see what this code was for. So we can put, athlete promo. So in our report, it'll show up as athlete promo with this coupon code and this amount, and for what it was for, percentage or value. So in this case, we don't want to set an expiration date, so we're going to close that. And then we also have promo codes. So what promo codes do is they're more for like mass participation events. We don't generally recommend using this unless there's like more than 500 people, just because it's more for like, hey, use this promo code during registration and receive a free T-shirt on the day of or something like that. So it's more for that. Generally, people will just use the coupon codes and say, here's $10 off your registration sort of thing. So we can go ahead and hit create coupon. And now our coupon has been created. It says here, and we have all our information. If you need to create more than 10 coupons for a single event or something, we can batch create them for you. We can create thousands at once. So if you feel that like you need to create more than 10 codes, 10 different codes, so like if it was like Snow 1 and then Snow 2 or Snow 3, etc., we generally say to email us and we can batch create them for you. We can make them as dynamic as possible. So we can have different names. We can have different uses for each code. It can apply to specific things. We can do a lot of different stuff when we do a batch import. So we recommend, unless you're really bored and you want to create 30 different coupon codes from the dashboard, to email us and we can batch create them in about 5 minutes. And then we can send you a list in a spreadsheet, and then you can simply just track them via the reports in the spreadsheet. So that pretty much concludes everything I have to show for this demo here. Was there anything that anyone wanted to bring up that I didn't clarify enough, or maybe I may have skipped over that you were looking to look at, or just any general questions that I can answer right now? It seems like we have everything covered here. If there's no questions, I will go ahead and sort of let everybody enjoy the rest of their Thursday. If you do have any questions, I guess Emily would be the best person to ask, and then she can either forward it off to me, or if you have my personal email, feel free to send an email off to myself, and I can answer the question as well. I strongly recommend going through the event wizard and just playing around, creating test events. We can remove them when you're done with your test. If you do have a real world example that you wanted to do, by all means, I definitely encourage that. If you have an event coming up in say November or something, and you wanted to sort of get a head start and use that as your guinea pig, I strongly recommend that because generally you'd have most of the information for that already. So I think that pretty much concludes our call here. I hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions or if I can help out in any way.
Cool. Thanks very much, Jackson. That was awesome.
No worries. No worries.
Cool. Okay. Talk to you later.
Bye, everyone.